And oh wow, I forgot I had adjusted this because I adjusted the overlay. Everybody, well, by the way, shout out to everybody. Welcome to XUP episode 201. I'd adjusted the overlay because honestly, I thought I was going to be end up doing a solo show tonight. But you know what? Last minute, we got 3-bit in the house. He shows up. He's better now. And then Steel Rain coming through because he said he has the time and he has the energy, so he wants to mix it up tonight. And I was super happy to see both you guys pop in here, man, because it was gonna be weird. It's gonna be weird having one of those solo shows, man. I was prepared if I had to do it, I was gonna do it, but I got two of my bros here, so it's absolutely amazing to see you guys. So I'm super happy that y'all are both here. And chat, shout out to you guys. Hopefully y'all are all having a great Friday night, and thank everybody for tuning in last week. If you were there for our episode 200, which was a blast. We had a lot of people come through, and the chat was just super into it and everything. So that meant a lot. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all the support. Speaking of, Ghost Fixer hit us up before we even went live with a solo ticket to the speculation train. Shoot you, motherfucker. Shout out to Ghost Fixer. Welcome back to the speculators, sir.
Choo-choo! Choo-choo!
Nate Dogg calling the show, also saying Mav getting ready to console war about Concord for 2 hours. Hey, there may be a little bit of Concord discussion as we could discuss other ways that we could think of to burn $400 million. We could be creative. Find some interesting ways to just light it on fire. You know, why not? But hey, let's get to the intro. Shout out to the one and only Steel for coming through, man. It's good to see you, dude. And you're gonna be actually on another show tomorrow too, on your free weekend. But yeah, it's good to see you here today.
Yeah, man. You know, we ended up delaying the show for Live Split Screen 2 next Saturday. So, you know, free up some time in the morning. Pawn's got some things going on, so do I. So we might as well just have a you know, we were gonna make do a 2-hour show. Well, you know, we don't do 2-hour shows, right? Yeah. That's us just getting past our intros, it seems like most of the time. But it's because we talk about games, man. But felt like that was a good opportunity for me to jump in here with you guys. I was supposed to be on for the 200 episode as well. Well, I wanted to be at least, but work calls. But we're here now, man, with a lot more news, a lot more heat to bring to the table, a lot more justification for myself for the vitriol that I have towards PlayStation. But what better place to do it than on the Xbox podcast, you know? This is the Xbox Ultimate, and since I had a bedroom already set up, I said I might as well use the keys. So, man, glad to be here. Appreciate you guys for you know, constantly welcoming me, and much love, man. Can't wait to get into it.
You're one of the fam, man. You always have the open door, you know. So, speaking of, Nate Dogg wanted to know if you were naked yet.
Not yet. We'll wait till about 10:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
We gotta hit like a Mach 3.5, I think.
That is a fact. We hit Mach. No, we gotta hit a Mach 5, and it's already that time.
Okay, right on. And shout out to 3-bit, who is not only back from Paris, but he's also better now because you know he got the travel bug when he got home. You know, yeah. But it's good to see you, man. You actually did call in from Paris at like 4 a.m.
Yeah,
that time zone on episode 200 before your flight. That was absolutely crazy. Appreciate you doing that. But how's it going, man?
it's good, man. That was so funny because it was like right before I was about to get on the plane, and then Izzy was just waking up, so I was kind of like, all right, guys, hi. But no, that was a great episode. I rewatched it after, and congrats to you, of course, but everybody in the community kind of celebrating that 200. It was like a special episode for sure. But hey, man, it's been a good week. I've returned from Paris, so that means Pixelated Echoes returns on Sunday. So that's gonna be fun. And I'm starting to replay Metal Gear. 'Cause- Wow.
Oh,
so,
which
yeah.
Metal Gear?
2. So
2?
I'm replaying one. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause it's been a while since I played this. Like I beat 2 several times. But it's been a while. I kind of forgot certain.
I'm really hoping they give the rest of the Metal Gear IP the what is it, the one that's coming out, is that called Snake Eater?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
The one
that's
that's coming
true.
out?
Yeah.
I really hope they give them all that treatment so I can go back and play through them. Because I will play Snake Eater because of it basically being completely remade. It looks like a completely different game. Because I'm not going to go back and play those games in their old condition. I missed them. So
You missed it. Okay, okay.
yeah, I've never
Yeah.
played Metal. I never played Metal Gear. My first Metal Gear period was Phantom Pain.
Oh, wow.
Oh dang, that yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one to kind of start with. It can like control wise, like the way you can like kind of dive and stuff is
Oh,
really
Phantom
solid.
Pain was absolutely outstanding. That is at least a 9 out of 10 game to me. The PvP was also amazing. Oh, Froggy, I'm real loud. My fault. I can turn myself down, Froggy. My fault.
I'd
But yeah,
adjusted
the
it a little bit
PvP
on
in there
my
was
end,
amazing.
but it didn't. Yeah, it sounds
I
like
got
it's just coming on like a little bit high on the gain or something. Not sure.
I turned it down. Hopefully that's better for you guys.
Oh yeah, a lot
But
better.
yeah, that's where that was my start. So, but yeah, I hope they remake them more.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I like. Do you play Ground Zeroes, the demo for Phantom Pain, like the early
Um,
release thing?
I don't know. Yes, I did. Because that's what got me interested in even playing. Because I always heard about Metal Gear from like my homies and stuff. They would tell me, "Oh, this dude Snake and all these different snakes and stuff." So when I started to get into the game, and it was like, "Oh, I'm playing a snake," and then I had like one of my homies like, "Nah, that's not Snake." And so this sent me down this whole path of like I'm completely lost playing this game. I don't know what snake I am. There's just a lot of things that end up happening. Then you get introduced to the weirdness that the Metal Gear franchise apparently has. So, and Phantom Pain
Dude,
is
I
apparently
love the story.
really
Like
bad.
the story is so insane, but the way he does it, it's like you just kind of accept it over time. It is it has a lot of it's like spy thriller politics and all this different stuff inside of it. It's great. The in terms of the gameplay, I mean, I always thought the Metal Gear gameplay has been solid. And when I replayed the second one, it does like your inventory. You can like look through walls, and then you can like you could kind of figure out how to approach a situation before you like go into a room full of baddies. So you're like, okay, I see like 3 guys there. I have like a cardboard box, so maybe I can sneak past them with a cardboard box. It's really interesting, but it has aged a little bit. So yeah, I do hope for you, Steel, that they could redo maybe the second one,
Yeah.
so you can play that one too.
It's
But
just
yeah,
interesting now with Hideo Kojima's wouldn't be involved with any new like
no,
any potential new ones or anything like that. Like so really all it's really all Konami can do that people will get excited for really is to redo those original
if
games.
they faithfully redo it,
Yeah,
yeah, if they
and for me Metal Gear 2 was the best. But that one also was surprising at the beginning. It was like, "Oh, what? Like this was weird. We're not playing as who we thought we were, at the beginning of that game." So there was it's just been a great franchise. Story wise, it's confusing as fuck. However, is interesting. I'm curious to see where the franchise goes, but stealth genre in general,
one of my
eh,
favorite stealth games. There's not a
yeah.
lot left, so
Well,
that's what
there
helps.
was two mainstays, right? There was Metal Gear, and then there was Splinter Cell,
Yeah, Splinter
right?
Cell is still
Yeah,
top
Splinter
notch.
Cell
Yeah.
for me was the
More
best.
action oriented too.
Right. And I kind of the story was more like it had that Clancy feel to it, which was like
Yeah.
it's just kind of you got immersed in that world a little bit, and things kind of made more sense about what was going on and like your
Yeah.
motives and the stealth, the way they presented it with you being able to climb on like pipes
The
and
split on the walls, I
yeah.
still haven't seen in a game of like till this day, like the you being able to kind of
Mhm.
split on a wall and just like drop somebody. Like, yeah,
All that
it's great.
stuff. It was great, and they had the good multiplayer modes on some of the Splinter Cells and stuff. So that's a franchise that I also want to see come back. Now, what's interesting is they do have a remake in the works, but we haven't seen anything from it since the announcement of it, like almost 3 years ago. It seems like maybe 2.5 or 2 years ago. But we did just get finally the Netflix tease of the Splinter Cell show, because there's going to be an animated series, Splinter Cell Death Watch. But the other interesting thing with there is, for Splinter Cell fans, you'll notice at the end of that the trailer, it is not Michael Ironside playing Sam Fisher. It is actually Liev Schreiber. And yeah, he's a great actor. I thought that in the trailer he did a pretty solid job with it. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if they got somebody like that it can do really well with the voice instead of Michael Ironside. But it is still weird not hearing that classic Sam Fisher voice, right? That kind of, in a way, it kind of ruined the last game some, because he looked older, but he kind of like sounded younger and stuff. It just kind of was weird. But yeah,
That's the one I didn't play as much. Blacklist.
It's still really good. Still a really good game.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, but we'll see what Ubisoft does. I do hope also that the outrage over the stealth missions in Star Wars Outlaws doesn't affect their ideas for the Splinter Cell remake.
I would hope not.
I hope not. It's like there's a certain amount of genres that are the gaming industry feels comfortable in making right now. Is the open world, of course. Ubisoft, that's their formula, but it's like the stealth genre has completely died out. So I really hope that if anybody, Ubisoft kind of returns back to their roots a little bit and releases a Splinter Cell, because we've been asking for it for a while. So I hope that the Netflix sort of adaptation for Splinter Cell kind of is a hint at that stealth genre kind of coming back a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, we know what they're working on Splinter Cell. I've seen little things of Splinter Cell, but like, I hope it comes back, the Fury at some point.
I think it will, as long as Ubisoft doesn't like get in their own way, right?
They probably will.
Yeah, they probably.
That's the problem right now.
That's the thing, is that they like tend to get in their own way.
Are they going to get in their way?
Yeah. Alvin hit us with a $5 super chat. Shout out to Alvin. Says Ashen 50th. Ashen 50, wishing 50th. Ashen, is this a Bloodborne reference? Ashen, okay, maybe.
Ashen 50th.
Ashen. I'm gonna read it as it is. Ashen 50th birthday. The Hidetaka Miyazaki, the GOAT. He says he'd love to work on Bloodborne again, but let's see if Herman has the vision for that. LMAO. Well, supposedly Concord was Herman's baby. According to Colin Moriarty and the Last Stand, what's their podcast called? Sacred Symbols. Sacred Symbols. Yeah. So Colin had some interesting information regarding Concord from what he says is an extremely solid source. And that we're on an Xbox podcast, so it's like hard not to talk about this though, because it was like so surprising, right? And I think it puts things a little bit into perspective on some of the plans of these companies, right? And what they've been doing over this generation. But yeah, Colin's source pretty much had told him that Concord ended up costing in total about $400 million, most of which was funded by Sony. Some could have been funded by the previous owner of Firewalk before Sony had acquired the company. Because Sony was involved early on before they were even acquired, and then they acquired them. And part of the reason they acquired them is because they believed so much in this IP. It was what he called kind of a culture of toxic positivity, where basically no criticism or can be allowed because everything is just pushing forward. Exactly, everything is great, even though it's all in turmoil behind the scenes. They just believe so much that it was going to come together. And $400 million later, they came out with what they did and pretty much lit it on fire by closing the servers 2 weeks later. And also, just yesterday, I think the actual game director left the studio, is what it was reported as well, with no clear sign of what's going to happen. A lot were up in the air of whether that game was going to actually come back in some kind of other format, maybe free to play or something, or rework some things and trying to, maybe they're still so committed to it, but I don't know, man. I think they are taking a loss on this one, and that's a huge loss. I saw some people trying to compare it to Halo and other
There you go.
games and stuff like that, and like it's
That's
like
gonna
it's
be my angle.
nowhere near that, man. Like this is like the worst disaster
It's
ever.
different.
Like
It's different.
these games, other games that some people say deem as failures, still exist and have lots of people playing them, right? And you can have different issues with some of these games and stuff, but to actually launch a game that costs you $400 million, it took 8 years to make, and then have such a colossal failure to where you had less than 100 people playing it, that you end up shutting down the servers. That is somehow they believe so much in this. To them, it was potentially going to be their Star Wars. It's
That's what Sony thought.
how can they miss the boat so much on that? And does that raise concern for what's been going on there behind the scenes for the last several years? Like, it just, for me, it does. What you said you were gonna pick back up on the Halo angle, because I saw a lot of people talking about that still.
I mean, but just because you reminded everybody, this is an Xbox podcast, right? And it does make it difficult to speak from the Xbox angle sometimes, especially on topics like these, because it's 100% in Sony's court. With the ball in Herman's hand or Tatoki's hand, or if you want to put it in their hand. But yeah, because people have been using the parallel as Halo, Halo Infinite being $500 million plus or whatever the development and marketing and everything else is in that game. You see Halo currently having the same problem that Gears of War has right now. Well, Gears 5 at least. And that's running into lobbies that aren't full, right? Depending on the game mode that you play, right? I play ranked a lot. My brother was playing ranked earlier, and he was told several times that, hey, we can't put you in a lobby because there's not enough players. This is a playlist that is in Halo. That should not exist, right? Now, that could just be them having so many different playlists or whatever the case, but that wasn't an issue for Halo before. But the thing about what's completely different from Halo in comparison to Concord is Halo has 20 years of existence as a gaming IP in changing how we look at first-person shooters on console. Concord was not that. And it's actually, I don't even know how, because apparently from what Colin said as well, is that the majority of the game was, I think he was like 5 or 6 years in before Sony had stepped in to spend the additional $200 million. He was saying that the game wasn't even put together. Like there wasn't an inkling of what they really needed the game to be, or whatever whether the trajectory was. Now, I could be misunderstanding that, but even thinking about that as an example, or even if you tie in the whole Star Wars ideology, there is no way that you try to compare yourself to an IP that has existed since that has existed for much longer, and it continues to be relevant. There's no way that you saw Concord like that. With the way the character designs were, how we're hearing stuff about the toxic positivity and all that as well. People not being able to speak up on the game. There just seems to be this, it almost seems like arrogance, and people were trying to put the blame on Jim Ryan. That's like, at this point, was it Jim Ryan's fault, or was Jim Ryan trying to correct some things? Was he trying to help the vision because he saw that, hey, maybe this Concord thing isn't the greatest, right? Maybe he was one of the few, and that's part of the reason why he got away. No, probably not. There's probably a lot of other things that he's put on the table. But again, when you look at all the other things that were live service games, that again, that had to be what Jim Ryan had wanted to greenlit, even if it ended up getting canceled. The Spider-Man multiplayer, factions, whatever the case may have been. if this is like things are adding up, at least for me, to the point where I think Jim Ryan's getting a little bit of credence here. He's getting a little bit of sway. He might be getting the golden parachute here. Yeah, I think he might have just stepped away because of the direction that this 8 years in development that this game had been there. Sony came in at the 5 to 6 year mark, and they said that this was their Star Wars.
The future of PlayStation.
This is the
future. Man,
how much do you guys got to bet that they put a lot of emphasis that Concord was going to help with the PlayStation 5 Pro, that Concord was going to be the new face of the things that we're doing moving forward, this live service strategy. And then you have people on social media, Twitter, X, YouTube, Facebook, and all over the place in comments, trying to defend like, oh, well, 8 years ago, those are the kind of games that were blowing up. Well, 8 years ago, character design wasn't that bad either, right? Like, I thought PlayStation was the home of unique and iconic characters. I don't know where that has gone. And outside of what they're doing with Kratos and giving us remasters consistently, moving into this generation, it's starting to make a lot of sense to why it's at least coming across clueless, or they don't have a roadmap for whatever the future is because they don't know.
Because they squandered it over these years working on that stuff, man. Like that's why they have no roadmap, right? And that's like, and bringing it back to Xbox, like the comparison over the announced games, and we went over this last night on PM and the PM. Like, there's 3 games that are actually like kind of officially announced from PlayStation first party, right? That we know of that are technically actually announced games. But like you compare that to Xbox, there's like more than that releasing this fucking year, and then you go into next year and the like with all the other games that are announced and all these other kind of things. And we talk about roadmaps, we talk about things like that. And then the other aspect of it is, hey, everybody was talking about how Xbox needs like their version of Astrobot and stuff like that, right? Even though they've had
Hi-Fi Rush,
even though
people didn't like it,
platformers, they even had Psychonauts 2, which is a successful game that also reviewed very well and all that kind of stuff. Like they've had games like that. They also now have the Crash IP, they have Spyro and all these other kind of things, and we know that Toys for Bob is even working on a game, right? So that they have these kind of things. But that was a conversation that everybody was kind of having just because PlayStation had a good platformer, right? Mm-hmm. Well, where's the conversation been from that side that PlayStation actually needs to get this games of service stuff right, and they actually need to have some damn multiplayer games, right? And they tried, but epically failed, because what we've been saying for years is they have no clue what the fuck they're doing with that stuff. To actually believe that much and to bet $400 million on that franchise and that game, more so than any of your other big franchises and games, canceling other things like factions, not doing things like SOCOM, not doing other kind like Twisted Metal, not doing the Spider-Man multiplayer, like any of those kind of things are just like are ignoring the obvious successes, and they run with something like Concord that they believed was going to be their Star Wars, the future of PlayStation, when behind the scenes it was utter dog shit. They had no clue what the fuck they were doing. They brought in Bungie to try and actually help them figure this stuff out, and then Bungie goes into turmoil. 3-bit, I want to lay down an actual timeline of events here, right? Mm-hmm. There was this whole acquisition of Firewalk. You had all this turmoil going on in the background. If you add in the elements that we already said, people knew it was kind of dog shit behind the scenes, but there was this whole toxic positivity thing going on where they kind of overlooked all that stuff. They were trying to be positive about it. They were going to hit their targets. They're going to throw money at it until it's a success, all this kind of stuff, right? And it was Herman Hulse's baby. And so you have that. You have that all going on behind the scenes. Then you have leading up to May of 2023, the first PlayStation showcase that we have had in a while. Remember, before this, we're all like, where's the showcase? Where's the showcase? Where's the showcase, right? They finally announced a showcase. We get a showcase. They have fucking Concord, Fair Games, and Marathon. What happens at that showcase? the PlayStation hardcore fan base absolutely fucking hated it. To them, it was like, what the hell is this? I was not surprised. There's no actual traction on line or excitement regarding these games or anything like that. And then you see, a few months later, Jim Ryan announced he's retiring. Well, as he saw the writing on the fucking wall, he was like, well, we fucking wasted some years. This is going to be bad. I'm getting the hell out of here, right? He retires. Oh, what happens soon after that? He announces his retirement. Oh, what's announced then is PlayStation cancels half of their planned games of service games. Well, it turns out that they were like, well, this didn't resonate with the fans. Jim Ryan saw the writing on the wall. We got to change direction here. We gotta. Games are too expensive, and they're not drawing any excitement or hype from our fans. Well, let's cancel half of them, right? So then we're like, hey, but we're gonna stick with Concord. That one we believe in. That's gonna be our future. That's like the future PlayStation. Let's roll with that. Put it out. Less than 100 people end up playing concurrently days after release. 2 weeks later, servers shut down. Most epic failure ever in the history of gaming that I can really recall from a first-party platform on a game release. And then everybody forgets about it because Astrobot comes out, and then they announce the PS5 Pro for $700.
That's usually how it goes. Yeah.
Is it? The whole chain of events with that is just absolutely insane. Meanwhile, Xbox has tons of releases. They have tons of games hitting day and date in Game Pass. They have all these other features and benefits that everybody keeps ignoring, but everybody's upset because the whole conversation this year has been Xbox putting their games on PlayStation.
Yep. I
So
mean,
it's just
the thing
bananas.
is, like, Sony doesn't understand live service games as far as I see. Sony said that they purchased Bungie, for example. You mentioned it for their like live service potential. Then supposedly Sony relied on their word to cancel the Last of Us factions. And then eventually Insomniac canceling Spider-Man Online to focus in on what I guess just put in all their resources into the single player portion of the game. And then you had only to then spend like 400 million on this game, or I guess there's reports that they technically spent 200 million, and then the Firewall they spent 200 million, so then it added up to 400 million, which is still crazy, right? For 200 million in itself, if that is the case, is insane for a game like this. And then you factor that in with Gollum and Anthem. Great titles, right? Gollum, we talked about that on this show, was a more successful game than Concord. So Xbox, like, say what you will about their strategies or what have you, they've had a ton of successful online franchises. I think it was announced that Elder Scrolls Online gets about, what was it, 400 million to something. We were talking about in our DMs the other day, like per year.
Elder Scrolls Online makes over $100 million a year.
$100 million a year, which is crazy, right? That's not even a franchise I think about. Yeah, at least within microtransaction or something like that. That's not a franchise I think about when I'm just casually think about like the franchise that Xbox has, but that is just one franchise that they have that is getting just alone 100 million.
Yeah, I mean that
a year.
15. It's over 15 million monthly, roughly, like around 15 monthly for 10 years.
It's crazy.
So
yeah,
that's like,
so
actually,
Concord
like closer to 160 million in that case, right?
Yeah. So when you're comparing, so Concord, it really shouldn't be compared to something like Halo, as Halo has kind of always stood in its own bucket of a genre, being kind of a unique sandbox title. Concord is a game that is something we've seen before. It is a new IP, but in terms of like the type of game it is, it's like something we've seen before, except it isn't free and you have to pay for it. There are games that do what Concord does way better, and it's free. You know, we've seen this genre in a variety of games, whether it be Apex or Overwatch. You could kind of blend it in with a couple of different games. but those are free. And then for Concord, you're already asking for a lot, and the fact that like people at Sony didn't even see this internally, like the fact that PlayStation potentially thought internally that this was their Star Wars, just shows you how out of touch they are, and the lack of knowledge or even self-awareness they have of the industry outside of genres that they are comfortable in, like third-person action adventure games. Awesome. Anything outside of that, they're like throwing and kind of seeing what sticks. So Steel, have always talked about like the failure that was Last of Us Factions being canceled, because that was
Mm-hmm.
like an easy win for them, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do. I guess we have another hero shooter being, um, what was Marathon, which is also another hero shooter, unless they've changed it. I remember
Yeah,
it.
I can't keep up. It's been this kind of shooter. Then it's been an extraction shooter. Now people are saying it's a hero shooter, and like
Yeah,
I don't know what it is anymore. I don't even know if they know what it's going to be. To be
yeah.
honest.
We'll see what it ends up being, but I mean, it's really unfortunate, because to me, I feel like it's kind of simple where they can go, but every time I think about PlayStation, like, oh, they can't afford to play on the same level as Xbox, sure, but I don't feel like you need to in situations like this where you spend 200 million on a game like Concord, or when you cancel a game like Spider-Man Online, or uh yeah, or cancel the Last of Us Factions. Like Last of Us Factions, as far as we know, was very close to being completed. I think you should start that back up, honestly, at this point. You invested so much money into a game like that, and then throw it on the wayside to then prioritize a game like Concord. There's just like certain decisions I don't understand. And it really, again, it just shows like kind of their lack of self-awareness about the industry, or like the fact that internally, like, yes, this is going to be the game that hits, without I mean, when I first saw that trailer, some of the gameplay trailer, I feel like a lot of people thought the same thing. Like they're like, "Oh, this is just like another kind of hero shooter. I'm not really feeling this. This kind of looks generic." And I don't know. Did they take that feedback? Did they just ignore the feedback? Like, we'll see. I don't know. Because people were saying that during the beta. If it was me, like even during the beta for a game like Concord, I would have been like, okay, the reception is not it's not bad. Like some people are enjoying the gameplay loop, but it's not to people, it's not hitting the mark that it should hit. So maybe we should change course. I feel like Sony's just so stubborn sometimes. They're just like, oh well, we're gonna release it anyways. And I don't know. It was crazy, the fact that internally they were thinking this. I think the biggest part of this story was internally, like how they were perceiving this game to be like the next
Yeah,
big thing.
that's the
I
most
think that was the biggest shock.
alarming thing
Yeah,
about, look, what have they been doing for all those years while they believed that about that franchise and that game?
8 years too in development.
What did they believe about some of the other stuff they had cooking in the background, right? Like the judgment from Herman Holst on that one was so off the mark,
Yeah,
right? Like alarmingly so.
I
It
think
just
it's yeah. I think it's even further off the mark. That demonstrates to me that I don't think he even lives in the same reality we live in.
well,
that's what I'm
it's
saying
just
though.
like, how could they not, when they made all these decisions, how could they not see that that one was, like, and maybe Jim Ryan saw the writing on the wall, right? And he was like, well, this is not going well. But ultimately, it makes a lot of sense now why Hiroki Totoki went around as like, hey, we suck at business, after visiting all the studios and stuff like that, right? So what I'm thinking they're probably doing is getting back to kind of like a little bit of what they have been known to be good at in more recent years. But that still isn't the most exciting thing for me, because what does that mean? It means more remasters, more director's cuts, more of the same franchises that I haven't been as excited about. Meanwhile, while everybody's been poo-pooing and saying how bad everything is for Xbox, like they've hit the ground running with new IP, with revisiting old IP, with coming out with free updates and third-party deals for games coming to Game Pass day and date as well. And like in contrast, for me, like as a consumer, I look at failures like Concord and what we have to look forward to on the PlayStation side, and I'm saying, well, if I was to make a decision today, would I go and which ecosystem would I invest in, right? And for me, it's an easy decision because I'm obviously biased and prefer the Xbox games and the variety that they offer anyway. But if you do prefer the PlayStation model and the PlayStation type games, I would, as a consumer of their brand right now, I'd be asking myself, what do I have to look forward to?
And also that just reminds me that if PlayStation releases a live service game, there's no guarantee from what I've seen that they will foster that
Support
and
it.
continue to support it. That's
Okay.
my biggest problem too. Like if you want a live service game to continue to grow, um it's never a guarantee with a live service game, right? It can go either way. People can come back, let's say you do a big update, or you could do a big update and no one really returns. But something that Sony has historically done so far with their live service titles is, oh, it's not hitting the mark, okay, we're just gonna abandon it, move on to the next thing, or just completely just shut it down. Something Xbox has done over the course of time is they've taken live service games, even if it wasn't successful at launch, they keep supporting it until it builds up that player base. People keep returning to that game, um, which in return, players keep returning to the game. Like Sea of Thieves, for example. I played Sea of Thieves at E3 when it first came out. It wasn't bare bones, but there was a lot of things missing from the game. And look at that game now from when it first launched. It's like a completely different game, and it kind of shows in the player count of how many people are enjoying a game like Sea of Thieves. But if you were to just release Sea of Thieves and then just leave it how it was, there's it's just it would have been dead, I guess, after a couple, like a year or 2 years. If you just kind of just left it and just it's like, okay, are people enjoying it? I guess they kind of are. um and that's something that I guess Sony has to realize. I mean, it's not my job to inform them, but PlayStation, if they really want a live service game to be successful, that is one of the things that they kind of have to realize is, um, what I would have did. I wouldn't have even canceled or took off Concord. If you spent 400 million on this game, I would want at least
Oh,
some return in investment.
oh, there's no
So,
return. Because of that's the danger of games being multiplayer based or being more so based by the community.
mhm.
Um, if you don't have a community base to be involved, then who are you running the game for? If you only made $1 million on your initial release and you returned your full $1 million, then you're not making nowhere close to enough to be able to maintain the servers because people aren't playing. There's no point.
Mhm.
You have dead servers that aren't doing anything. Now
True.
Xbox can do that because they have their own servers, right? That's when you see the difference in ideology, right? They're always going to be different. Microsoft being more software based, they're going to make more software based moves, going the cloud direction. Partially was part of that, which has allowed them to do a lot of the other things that we
So
enjoy about
are you
Xbox, right?
saying so like Xbox's mentality, let's say with Sea of Thieves, for example,
Yeah.
they were able to foster that game to what it is today
Hmm.
because of that mentality? Would you say like, because Xbox is a because of how big they are, they're able to make those moves, and Sony essentially just can't because of their, I guess, their business strategies, or
Not
like
when
what would
Sony's
you say?
spending, not when Sony's spending $400 million to do it. No,
Yeah.
that's you're talking about again.
Yeah.
You got to make the only way the comparison with Halo works is if it's a true and tried IP. Like like me and you agree, 3-bit, that now if we were talking about them spending 400 million on factions, right, and they pulled factions off them, I'd be like, I don't know about that. But again, there's no universe where I could ever anticipate. No, factions wasn't the biggest thing back in the day, and it wasn't going to be, because it was unique. It didn't have enough eyes on it. Not enough people were aware. And again, you were still fostering a base that believes. Again, I hear this all the time from people in the community, and I've heard this all the time just as a gamer, where people prefer the single player side to gaming, especially on the PlayStation, on PlayStation. Yeah, you have your people who play Call of Duty, but when it comes to the first party, the number one thing people try to argue about, again, if Xbox's first party was a problem, why are we not looking further into why is it okay for Sony to deliver an experience with The Last of Us as a complete package with single player and multiplayer, and then now to make the determination that that's not the direction that you want to go, and then 10 years later, again, you spent 8 years having an idea. It's not like Sony was clueless about what Concord was becoming. These teams already had a relationship going. So you had other people around you in the live service market itself showing you what is going to work. I talk about all the time. There is an extreme lack of good third-person multiplayer shooters out there.
Yeah.
Factions is the biggest determining factor that I think would have been what they were looking for if that was the 400 million. But even that is such an exorbitant amount. Again, Xbox can spend 400 million on Halo because Halo's been around for 20 plus years. Like, that's a worthy investment. Hey, we messed it up. We don't have it together, but Halo has always been top echelon. Is Halo's problem is just Halo being Halo. Halo is not an easy game to play. It's not a casual friendly game. The skill-based matchmaking doesn't make it any better. And then we get into this whole other conversation about that as well. It's just things are changing. But Sony, to me, obviously doesn't see the direction that they need to go with their own IP, because you don't have to spend that money. You had people talking about, I'm not even going back to SOCOM, things that were working. Uncharted's multiplayer was apparently good. Why wasn't that service? Was it because not enough people were playing it? Potentially, but how do you foster that base? And that's the one thing, to your point, 3-bit, where Microsoft, Xbox has been allowed to do that, because Xbox is, at least to me and how I see it, Xbox has always been the multiplayer box. Yeah, sure, you can throw the shooter in there as well, but this is the ecosystem that has tried these methods, make them tried and true, and demonstrated that, hey, we can make this better over time as long as we have people coming in. Because also, to your point again, Sea of Thieves' problem wasn't that it didn't have people playing it. Sea of Thieves' problem was it didn't have content.
Yeah,
you sold the game as one thing, and it didn't end up being that.
Which is like Halo's kind of like when you see the critiques of Halo, especially you look at the earlier reviews of Halo Infinite, it was positive. People are like, "Wow, this game is great" and stuff. It was basically later on when people are like,
"Okay, the pipeline, they were taking way too damn long to
address
some of the issues," and they also had the seasons took were 6-month seasons, right? And when they did hit, they had very little content in them, so it just had a slow rollout to kind of let that excitement kind of die a little bit, which was a failure on their end. But I always see Halo used as an example of a failure, right? Now, from a business perspective, like maybe in people's perception and minds, it's done damage to the brand, right? But overall, you still have a lot of people playing today, and they're still having fun with this game. But also, it was a financial success, which is, and comparing it to something like Concord, you have Concord was like they made $1 million maybe on a $400 million investment, and
they refunded people.
Now, yeah, exactly. They had to give it back, right? So, now Halo. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah," but you talk about the launch of Halo, right? So put in comparisons, okay? Now this Halo is getting compared somewhat because it had a $500 million budget, famously so, It was like
Mhm.
the most expensive game they've ever made,
It's Halo.
and all
Yeah.
that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if this article is 33rdsquare.com talking about the financial aspects of Halo Infinite, okay?
Mhm.
It says, as Halo Infinite a financial success, a nuanced look at the evidence. If you judge solely by early sales momentum, Halo Infinite undoubtedly succeeded financially for Microsoft and 343. But when
Mhm.
evaluating more holistic metrics like player engagement, reputation, and long-term revenue potential, the picture gets murky. Overall, I would assess
Mhm.
Infinite as a moderate financial success, profitable but below expectations set for the storied
Mhm.
franchise. As a live service game, its full legacy remains unwritten. This is a very fair, like, unbiased, just financial take on this thing, right? Halo
Yeah.
Infinite
It
had
was
towering hype to live up to as the Xbox brand flagship and a marquee
always.
system seller for Xbox Series X and S. After numerous
Mhm.
delays and development issues, the pressure was on to deliver a hit, earning back its massive $500 million budget and restoring Halo as a top tier IP. By some
Mhm.
measures, Infinite succeeded. It shipped over 3.3 million copies at launch, becoming the fastest selling Xbox Game Studio title ever. Attracted over 20 million multiplayer players in its first month. It generated over $400 million in revenue in the first 10 days. Set concurrent player count records for the franchise on Xbox and Steam. But behind these stats, Infinite exhibited troubling player retention issues. A
It's not a
content
10-year game.
Right. A
Yeah,
content
definitely not
bare
a
Yeah.
10-year.
live service and monetization missteps damaging its long-term prospects. Let's dive deeper into the story behind the scenes. Rocky development led to compromises. Halo Infinite endured a long, challenging production marred by leadership shakeup, scope cuts, and transparency issues. After the ambitious
Mhm.
E3 2019 demo failed to impress fans with its art style and graphics, Microsoft delayed the game over a year for improvements and pivoted Infinite into a platform model. The campaign mode underwent a major reboot in 2020 with features like the open world being scaled back. Developer 343 Industries felt the pressure of nailing this release, but complications kept
Mhm.
mounting. In August of 2020, the studio lost director Chris Lee. A month prior, narrative lead Mary Olson also departed, with Infinite
Mhm.
lagging behind internally. Difficult decisions were made to split multiplayer and single player into separate launches. Features like campaign co-op, forge editing, and mission replay were all punted down the road. Sources I
Mhm.
spoke to who worked on Infinite cited a stressful, disjointed development full of uncertainty. The delay and scope cuts were symptomatic of deeper problems. In their view, Microsoft set unrealistic expectations by positioning Infinite as the must-have Xbox Series X and S launch title before giving 343 the resources to properly achieve that vision. The result was a compromised product that had to cut corners to hit targeted release windows. While still fairly polished, Infinite shipped missing key elements that left many fans disappointed. Now, here we go back into the positive aspect of it. Blockbuster early sales beat expectations. For all its development struggles, Halo Infinite came flying out of the gate in sales terms. Within
Mhm.
10 days, the game had cleared an estimated 3.3 million copies at retail, plus over 3 million players via Game Pass, handedly outpacing Halo 4 and Halo 5. Xbox boasted Infinite saw the highest concurrent users ever for a Halo title. In its launch month, Halo Infinite pulled in 400 million in revenue, including a staggering 270 million dollars from microtransactions.
Oof.
Let that sink in. 270 million dollars in microtransactions.
And that's
And it
light.
and it's
Yeah.
in its launch month.
Mhm.
Yeah.
On cosmetic items alone. For Microsoft, these were huge numbers that signaled a return to form. Early reception was also glowing, with many reviews lauding Infinite's gameplay as reminiscent of classic.
Mhm.
By the most basic financial metrics of launch sales, Halo Infinite absolutely succeeded. It instantly became Xbox's fastest selling first party title, beating records once held by Halo 3 and Halo 4, outpacing its predecessors and generating huge revenues out the gate. Infinite seemed poised to deliver on its next gen promise. So then we go into, like, the retention and all this other kind of things and whatever.
Mhm.
But for a game that cost $500 million to develop, they hit $1 billion within its first year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it gets into the conversation of like when to me, I always make this point because I feel like people like to rag on Halo quite a bit. I always say the worst Halo to me is still a great game.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
like every
Top to
single
bottom.
Halo I've played, I love all the
Mhm.
Halos. I think like
Top to
you can have
bottom.
your critiques about the Halo, like oh it wasn't what I want the Halo franchise to be. I want it to have this X Y and Z. But each Halo
Bro,
game is a quality game, in my opinion.
the only
But
thing you compare Halo to is Halo.
yeah,
That's what's
Yeah.
crazy about it. There is
yep,
nothing else out there that even draws close to comparison before it becomes a completely different game. You can't compare Battlefield because it's a different game. It's not Call of Duty, although, again, and this is the thing that I'll always go on a tangent about. People told me for years that Halo wasn't a good game because Halo had shields. Now, the most popular game mode that is played is Battle Royales in Fortnite and Call of Duty, where everybody is constantly putting on armor and shooting shields off of people. But you guys didn't like Halo. So it's not that it's not Halo was never the problem. It was it was always the people who just weren't, it just wasn't for them, which is absolutely fine. But that is a Halo problem that Halo has to figure out, and that Microsoft, that is the biggest problem that I can't let them go for, is that, more information keeps coming down the pipeline of, hey, you got all these contractor situations going on. Again, it goes to the point of, hey, this is your number one IP, Concord, like we've been talking about, was Sony's seen as number one IP in the moment. And look at where it's getting you. So just for the sake of like comparing the two, again, it's definitely apples to oranges, but look what happens when the company who can't really afford to spend 400 million, 500 million on a miss, what are they going to do to recuperate from this? It doesn't matter how many consoles you sell. Like, people bragging about Sony can right now sell 100 million consoles. What does that do? Are more people going to buy Astrobot? Probably not. Are more people
Nope.
going to buy Returnal? Probably not. Right? Or more people going to buy God of War or the remastered version of Horizon Zero Dawn because it's going to have the Forbidden West assets in it. That's what people are assuming is going to happen. Because I know people are like, oh, why would they why would they remaster for Zero Dawn? It already looks good. They
those
want to put the
necessary.
Forbidden West assets in. It is extremely unnecessary because the game already looks good, and we're in an era of gaming where there's a finite return that you're going to get on a visual fidelity point, and something else has to make you stand out. I don't see what else other than second and third party deals that is working for Sony, because obviously their first party doesn't have it together in comparison to what Xbox has been trying to foster this entire time. Working off the back foot, working off of negative press, working off of people being like, oh, who cares about Xbox? Right? Like, it's very interesting to see how these things play out and how these two giants, and again, Nintendo will never be in the conversation as much as they should be, I think, right? Smash Brothers should be more in the conversation. Splatoon or whatever should be more in the conversation. They need more multiplayer games, but how crazy is it that Nintendo can create on their old service, online
Their
infrastructure,
Windows
a
2000.
more sustainable online game in Splatoon than a big giant like Sony can, who's been in the gaming industry again for for almost the longest amount of time at this console thing. It's just weird, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a perception problem out there, I think, in general, right? About successes and failures. And it's easy for any time Xbox doesn't hit a home run or have like a long-term ongoing success with something or miss a 90, like Halo Infinite had an 87 on Meta, right? But people, revisionist perception, yeah, Halo like was sucked, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense, right? Or like Starfield, you have articles coming out now with the headline, something like, will Shattered Space save Starfield, which was the biggest launch in Bethesda's history for their titles in Starfield, right? And you have these successes that are perceived to be failures because there's negative conversation about them, right? Conversation doesn't mean necessarily a failure. Now, for Microsoft, they obviously, and Xbox, they don't want that perception. They don't want that narrative to be out there because that's damaging for a brand, right? But individually judging these games for how many people play them and how many people continue to play them and how good they are, they've been absolute massive successes for them in many ways. And we compare and contrast to what the actual competition that's always praised for being the best and having the best, see their epic failures just get washed over and completely forgotten about time and time again. This isn't the first time this generation that they've had disastrous first party releases either. And Concord is probably, like I said, especially after hearing even more information from Colin Moriarty, who says he really trusts that source, is for me, that's got to be the most disastrous first party launch from a major platform holder in the modern era of gaming ever. And
Concord isn't even the biggest loss Sony has suffered as a company. That is definitely Bungie.
Well, yeah,
they paid 1.2 billion, or they said in core documents that they overpaid 1.2 billion. I would say like it's right under that. But yeah,
that one at least still has a chance to redeem itself in some form or fashion eventually. Concord is, I don't know, man. Like I don't think it's ever gonna come back, but we'll see. Shout out to JTQ with the $5 super chat. It says PlayStation is so anti-consumer now, it's depressing for their fans. On second thought, their fans love PlayStation for that. It's weird, man. You know, like I gotta say, like, I try and just think of myself as a consumer, and sometimes it seems console worry, and I'll make jokes and stuff like that and shit sometimes, but it really is just because based on what I like and what I see, and what I see out there, like, doesn't excite me at all right now for PlayStation. Now they have a chance. If they have a showcase, they actually have good stuff. They actually start announcing when some of the good games that I could be excited for come out. I'll be back on board, right? But for now, that's not happening. And when we've wanted them to try and do more multiplayer and all that kind of stuff, you know, they have Helldivers. That's a positive, right? But like these big AAA, like, hey, let's do like something awesome multiplayer wise. They've canceled the most exciting ones, and they went along with things like Concord and just crashed and burned and lit their $400 million on fire.
So if they bring back like Last of Us Factions, I would be the first to say like I would be really excited to see that. Like that. Like I liked The Last of Us Online. It's just Sony continuously deprioritizing online in their titles. Like the fact that they didn't bring the online portion for their remake of the first one was just a weird decision to me. But it is what it is. I guess. I would love to see a Spider-Man online, like if they ever decide to bring that back. I thought Spider-Man 2 was like the perfect opportunity to do that. You have like two Spider-Man. That would have been cool. But
you know what? At least they got Microsoft's first games and service games, right? They got Xboxes. Sure. They got Sea of Thieves now. You know, they'll have Call of Duty continuing. They'll have Diablo. They have Minecraft. You know.
Yep.
Hey, I guess they'll just rely on third party to get everything done, which is what they've been doing for a while for their biggest revenue, which we also said was potentially a problem and why they freaked out so much about Call of Duty in the first place, right? But yeah,
which potentially led to Jim Ryan's fire. But we were speculating, I guess, on several shows of like what possibly led to that. I feel like his failure of losing Call of Duty in court case.
I think he saw the writing on the wall and was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. I honestly think that's what it was. We'll say maybe it's not, but I really that's what I said when I saw it. I said like they tried this thing and he saw that it wasn't going to work out, and he was like, well, this is going to be a really shitty next few years. I'm going to leave right now. And
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen a good Sony showcase that actually showed their lineup. I really hope that they're going to have at least a dream showcase soon, so I could kind of just get some picture of what Sony has been working on. I'm not excited about any remasters, remakes, or anything like that. Of Days Gone, a game that has no future because they canceled the second one. I really just
But
I wonder.
I got a dev question for you more so
Yeah,
than
yeah, go ahead.
anything. Because you bring up the point of like the showcase of dreams and stuff like that, and as
Yep.
much as we've seen from Wolverine, right? Just the leaks that have, from what we've been told, can really cripple the development cycle because again, if somebody was able to get access to that stuff, I'd imagine like they probably would need to rework a lot of that. I like how like what is your thoughts on that kind of process, or like even if you would have an idea on how that would kind of work, and wouldn't that kind of like delay kind of the roadmap as well for Insomniac because of those leagues?
It could be a thing. Like I wonder what their mentality is internally, but I would be like, "Well, I'm going to prove y'all wrong," type thing.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah, yeah,
because it'll naturally whatever Insomniac comes out with will just have more polish, right? It's going to look a
yeah,
little bit
for sure, for
shinier
sure.
than what's already out there and stuff like that. It I'm sure it has led to internal delays already. Like I'm sure once that leak came out, they did have some sort of boardroom game plan of like, okay, well, what did the public think, of the gameplay so
Yeah.
far? Did they think it was a little weird in some areas? I personally, I've
Because they could
seen.
have, if I, because the reason I ask it like this is because I can imagine if those leaks didn't happen, and they polished up a little section again, a 30-second little sizzle reel of Wolverine, they could have used that for the PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. Right after, boom, here's a shortcut of Wolverine. This is what to expect, showing the real versatile gameplay, claws in chest, all the crazy stuff
Supposed to
that
come
we've
out
kind of
next year,
exposed.
right? Or
And that's what I thought that's what the rumor was before, but there's again, that's why like I'm so curious on how much this has possibly delayed things because I don't if it's going to come out next year, we got teasers for Spider-Man 2 years out, right? Like
yeah,
and it's
it
a
is weird.
Marvel game. Like Wolverine is hot right now too, so it's like it's a good time to
Yeah.
make a little tease. So it's just like it seems like there's even more stuff behind the scenes, even for Insomniac, that they may have to work on getting together. And again, from what Colin was saying as well, apparently other studios had to help with Concord, right? So it's like how many other studios had to get involved? Was Insomniac part of that? Does that delay everything else that they could have possibly had in their pipeline because you have to dedicate pieces of your team to help get this game out on the forefront that we thought it was going to be a Star Wars like thing for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like before a lot of studios even make a game, like I mentioned a while ago, I've seen early footage of Splinter Cell, but like what something like Wolverine before they even make the game, they'll pitch it to someone like Sony and make a
Right.
really cool, let's say like
Vertical
3 minute
slice. Yeah.
trailer, vertical slice. Yeah, that's
Yeah. CG guy kind of thing. Yeah.
so I'm sure that that exists. I honestly don't know why they wouldn't have shown it with the PS5 Pro because honestly, the PS5 Pro just showing the older games that people have already experienced. I mean,
And it would have been perfect. Three
would have
claws with Wolverine, three stripes on the console. Like, there's just so many things
Oh,
you
it's
could
like
have
if they
played
had
into.
Wolverine
Like,
make the 3 stripes.
bro, you could have had a
yeah.
Wolverine
Yeah.
console.
Yeah.
That could have been another special edition that they could
Honestly,
have
They'll
yeah,
done.
that's
probably
a
Just so
have
great
it's like,
question, man. I
they'll
don't know.
probably have it. They'll have a Wolverine console in
but
I mean,
it's
2026.
not
Alvin says
no
2026, but
teases,
still.
but no
So
teases for nothing.
well, that was the thing. They didn't have a showcase. It's like
It's
again, they failed to deliver on a
that's
showcase.
crazy.
And
That's
why
crazy.
could they possibly? Because of all this, what we've been speculating for a long time is that they're behind on actual games. Like, and maybe because they wasted all this time on this other bullshit on things like Concord. But meanwhile, Xbox has several successful online multiplayer games and service games, and they also have a ton of single player games already slated to come out. So it's interesting just looking at the actual reality versus perception out there, and I think
Yeah.
those information
Yeah,
that was
I
shared
remember
today was
with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, for example, like IGN and all these sites was basically calling that game trash and uh giving it like a 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. But a lot of people
They
bought
can't
it.
do that with Black Ops 6. There's just no way, especially how that campaign is lining up. There's no way that this next one is going to end up getting a 4. So
Even if
even
it
if it gets a
does,
6,
people are
I
gonna play.
think that I think people are definitely going to speak up. And again, I think just speaking to the Call of Duty point real quick, I think I think Black Ops 6 will inflate Game Pass numbers pretty heavily. I'm expecting a 30 million plus push just because of it being there day one.
What is it
Once
at
more
now?
and more people.
the last official
What?
numbers we had was like
Yeah, it's
around
like
30.
35 or
Yeah,
something, like 30,
something like
35
Okay.
or something like that.
So
yeah,
yeah, I
which
think it'll push it like 5, 10
yeah,
million.
which Game Pass
Probably.
has like stalled more than they thought it would, right? But I think
Right.
a lot of that was because of the delays in the games that they've had for their exciting first party stuff, and then 2022 set them back quite a bit because they had originally expected a lot of growth for 2022, but that ended up being like their worst year, right? 2023 had some more traction, obviously. Then you had the ABK close. This year you've had a slow first half of the year, right? But now things are starting to really accelerate. We have a lot of games starting to hit Game Pass day and date now from first party and also third party developers, not only on console but on PC. But then leading into next year, there's already multiple big titles as well. But you're right, Call of Duty is going to be the biggest one out of all of them, just because it always is, right? But you have also Doom next year, you have Avowed next year, you have Fable next year, you have South of Midnight next year, and then plus whatever else they end up doing for more titles that are more that AA or indie level kind of quality games also, because they always have some of those too. So there's a lot to reveal, man, and which kind of ends up being interesting that we have a lot of games that are going to be shown at a showcase like Tokyo Game Show, because they're taking advantage of everything now. They're taking advantage of every opportunity. Hey, I didn't even mention Indiana Jones is coming out this year too, man. Like, and Flight Sim,
Yeah.
Aura.
Flight Sim looks like to be some fun too. I
actually been looking at some gameplay for Flight Sim. It looks pretty.
Yeah, they had a post about it today. Shout out to Spartan661, gifted 5 fun speculation memberships.
Choo-choo!
Choo-choo, motherfucker. Thank you, Spartan. But he was not done, because he wanted to add another card to the speculation train with another 5 bombs. Shout out to Spartan661. Thank you so much for the support on the channel. Can you give me another choo-choo? I know you like to ride the trains, so.
Yeah,
Choo-choo! Choo-choo!
Appreciate it. Thank you, Spartan661, dude. Absolutely amazing support as always. And then Alvin hit us with a $2 super chat. Said leaks said standalone Venom 2025 and Wolverine 2026. Which I would think we're expecting kind of the Venom thing to be kind of like
so we're gonna get a
Miles Morales,
we're gonna get a standalone Venom
5 or whatever kind of.
It's so
Where's
crazy.
the DLC for Spider-Man 2?
That is going to be the DLC. If you guys played Spider-Man 2, you play as Venom for a short section. They already have the gameplay in there. Just drop that.
But if Venom is going to be a standalone, then that's not DLC. DLC is a standalone. It's part of the same game. So you're telling me that Spider-Man 2 is about to go through no DLC. It's not going to have 3 or 4 DLC packs like the first game.
Well, they plan on doing online, but I don't think they're doing that.
So
anymore.
We're just going straight into Miles Morales. Venom, 8 hours of Venom.
Well, they said they're in the leaks. They said Spider-Man 3 and 4. It's going to be like parts.
I thought there was DLC coming for Spider-Man 2. I guess I was wrong.
Well, we thought Miles Morales was going to be DLC for Spider-Man 1.
Well, true. But and Miles Morales ended up, and I still need to get through Miles Morales. But Miles Morales apparently ended up being still a good product on its own. I think it was another 6 to 8 hour game. It complemented the first game. So again, as much as it could have been DLC, it did end up being its own standalone product. But still, Spider-Man 2018 still had 4 DLCs.
Yeah.
Black Cat, Sandman, like they had the other things that released underneath that. None of that stuff has even been teased or announced for Spider-Man 2. Like that could have been another prime opportunity for the PlayStation 5 Pro. Hey, look at the DLC coming for Spider-Man 2. Like you have to keep that train. Like that's the other thing that's crazy to me about Spider-Man. Like I don't think Sony is the greatest stewards of the IP. They haven't proved it with the movies. You know, they have to have Marvel involved more for the movies to be even decent, right? Even Venom is struggling. I feel like they're doing the 3rd movie for Venom just because. Although I'm not like because I could be extremely critical about it, but I'm not. I like them for what they are, and I like Tom Hardy, so that's cool. But taking it for what it is, where is the roadmap for Spider-Man and how are you releasing your content for this game? And this is something else that they've complained about is another money hole for them. And you don't have anything to back up the issues that you're having. How can you get more people excited or involved or want them to play this new game if you're trying to get people excited about Final Fantasy 16 when Final Fantasy hasn't been exciting for people since the PlayStation 2? Like I don't know what, or PlayStation 3 even, if you want to do the 10 and 10-2 series, or that I mean I hadn't played those, but there are others who it's like what is like it's just that is weird.
And internally I mean, I thought it was weird from the Insomniac leaks. I thought it was weird that it costs, what was it, 5 times more or something to do Spider-Man 2, considering the assets you already had. You're using this very same animation.
Well,
It's the same city, and it's 200 million for Spider-Man 2. You would think it was supposed to be a cheaper.
So let's get into just a little aspect to this of supporting games of service, right? So it came out also, right, that part of the reason why they had canceled, and I think maybe this was part of the is it part of the FTC leaks or part of the Insomniac leaks, but part of the reason they had canceled Factions from Naughty Dog was because they couldn't handle doing games of service and also doing like a single player game. They just didn't have the resources, right? So like doing Factions into the kind of game that they were blowing it up to be, they were said that it was going to cost them the ability to make their kinds of games that they're excited to make and all that kind of stuff. And that was kind of, for me, it was like, hey, this is how we sell it to the fans, right? Like, hey, hey, don't worry, you know, we're gonna make the stuff that you actually like, and don't worry about this other thing that we promised you was actually coming with the game originally, and then we ended up turning it into a huge separate thing that we said was gonna be free for you later on, but then we ended up actually canceling it later because we can't figure it out. Besides all that, we're getting back to what we do, right? So for me, you look at what Sony did with Concord, and supposedly, according to Colin Moriarty, possibly they ended up outsourcing to a bunch of studios to get it to the finish line, right? But remember, also, Concord, they didn't really have a huge roadmap of content or anything games of servicey really exciting to promote. No battle pass stuff, no like really or anything like that that was like, hey, this is going to be a reason why you should invest and stay with Concord. So I don't know what their plans for ongoing support was too much on that game, besides their original plans of having ongoing story content, which is done in tons of games of service games, and every time a new season starts, you have this little cutscene and all that kind of stuff. It's not out of the ordinary for that, right? But why wasn't there people pushing for them? Okay, well, you know, like Microsoft, they get Certain Affinity to help on Halo. You know, they get Crystal Dynamics to help make Perfect Dark. They get Eidos Montreal to help on Fable. Right, and those are even single player games, but like, yeah, it's kind of pretty common for these big games of service games and multiplayer games that you're trying to turn into a huge thing to need huge support from outside. So in that circumstance, canceling the game was more so potentially a cost decision from Sony with not wanting to do the work for outsourcing. You don't have to do all the bulk at Naughty Dog. You could outsource it, right, to a team that's proficient with multiplayer.
They also put that problem on themselves. Like no one asked them to go super crazy.
Right. You
with
just do as like
Last
a smaller mode and grow it
Like
from
they
there.
just wanted what was kind of
Yeah.
in the first game again with maybe some cool new features, new modes, or something like that.
More
That's kind of
maps,
But
more
updated, look
maps.
but
better.
going into
Like no one was
Spider-Man,
asking
like
for them to do that.
that's the same thing. Like this Insomniac was like, we can't do this and do this at the same time. Well, like, okay, Sony is where you step in and you get development support for them. You grow the studio, you go and get other studios to help do these things. Instead, they just decided to cancel them all. Right?
Yeah, and it just really goes into this weird problem. Like the next Spider-Man game, from my understanding, is going to be Venom,
Mm-hmm.
which is taking the assets that's already there in Spider-Man 2 to speed up
Jesus.
development.
Yeah.
And then you're making a standalone of that, which is kind of like another Miles Morales situation.
Jesus.
I like Miles Morales, but like
Yeah.
it's just another situation. And then from the leaks, we also found out that oh, it'll cost us less to just split the next Spider-Man game into 2 parts.
Mm.
So Spider-Man 3 and I guess 3 part 1 and 3 part 2 is what they're planning. And I'm just like it's just insane to me like the cost cutting things you see right out the gate from Sony and like how they are managing their studios. Like Insomniac is pretty much just the Marvel studio at this moment. Um and like Steele was saying earlier, I don't think they're the best uh stewards of the Spider-Man franchise. But Insomniac, they're a talented studio. Out of everybody at Sony, I will
Oh
say
yeah.
Insomniac is the top studio probably at Sony right
Easily.
now.
Hmm.
Them and then maybe Naughty Dog right under them, I guess. I'm trying to think of another like huge studio, but no, they're reliable, which is
Yeah.
they're pumping out these games. Like the fact that Wolverine is supposed to come out in 2026 and then I guess Venom next year is actually pretty insane. But to me, I felt with Spider-Man 2, like I felt how rushed it was in my opinion. Like when I was playing Spider-Man 2, I will uh, I got blasted online for saying like this is the buggiest game I played all year. That was before I probably played the Star Wars Jedi game. But at the time, Spider-Man 2 was the buggiest game I played, and it just felt the experience felt rushed, which is confusing to me of how that game ended up spending way more than the first game when you're using the same amount of or you're using like 60-70% of the same assets. Like
Mocap.
but it shouldn't be 200. That's the thing
Hey,
that's driving me crazy is thinking about it
it's
like
those Mary Jane missions. That's
it
what
must have
that's
been.
what drove the price
Must have
up.
been.
Yeah.
See, when you make Mary Jane as strong as Spider Man with a
Yep,
with
yep.
a strap with an electric strap, hey bro, that's $200 million right there.
It was crazy that when I was playing that game that like in Spider-Man, you're doing all these combos to take down one guy. You're like you're punching him up in the air and you're like do, and then the guy is still alive. He gets back up like ugh, and then with Mary Jane, you just zap
Yeah,
somebody
just
once and they're
hey,
dead.
she
Yeah,
got it,
yeah,
man.
it is what it
Yeah.
is.
But
Um,
I mean, to the conversation though, like
Yeah,
from Concord to what we're seeing with even Spider Man, there is and just in the industry in totality. I think more and more games, like Space Marine, for an example, and I think that's why it's getting so much credit as well. Is it's proving that you can do more with less, right? If you need to, if you feel like you have to, and I do think that Sony on a game development side of things needs to go back into or needs to look back at what makes a game in the first place. And I think that that will inherently help save them some money because making these games much more movie like with the cinematics and everything. Like, look, things look good, but I think other developers are also proving you can still have a really clean and good looking game, as long as you can tell a good story as well. And that's like I mean, Sony tells decent stories. You just have to figure out how to get these prices down, and get more content on it rolling out.
Yeah,
But
the priorities have
second, third party,
shifted with technology, right? Like
yeah,
uh back in the day, you had all these. It kind of shows like at the Game Awards, for example, even last year, of what games is prioritized as Game of the Year. You normally won't see any other genre. You get the RPGs, of course, you get the third person action adventure games and things like that. But like, there's so many other genres that are either ignored because the gaming industry prioritizes specific things. But I think what has been lost over time is making, like what Steele was saying, like making a game feel like a game. You start focusing on the puddles, all this ray tracing, all this technology, and then you're like, oh, it looks good, but like it looks good and then it plays at like 28 frames per second, or a game like Immortal, for example. I keep thinking of Immortal AVM whenever I think about an unoptimized game. I didn't personally enjoy
and the
that
fact
game.
that they apparently fixed the performance on that game too.
Oh, did they? Okay,
Apparently, yeah,
I'll go
apparently it
back.
runs pretty well, pretty darn well,
It was
man.
like $2 when I picked it up, so I think it was.
Yeah,
I gotta check it out. But yeah, I mean, a lot of developers nowadays they focus on the graphics, they focus on making games more cinematic, and I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love
I
good looking
like it too.
games.
Yeah, I like it.
But at the end of the day, I also play games like Bully, and I'll play that for like hours and hours, and that game, it's kind of old, but it's fun for me. I prioritize gameplay at the end of the day, most of the time. Now,
Right.
like some games, the gameplay loop maybe it's a little bit outdated, and you're like, okay, this didn't age well, or this didn't age well. But a good game is a good game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's something I definitely give credit to for the new Warhammer game, which I definitely got to check out. I've been really wanting to jump into that game with somebody. But I hope that is just an example for people. Just kind of like Baldur's Gate was an example for the industry, and the industry responded in a way where they're just like, yeah, this is impossible to make. Uh and people like, no, you should you should look at what they're trying to do and you try to replicate it. But a lot of if you guys remember the talk around that time, they're like, no, we can't, no one can make a Baldur's Gate 3. It's like, you can, um, but you just gotta prioritize a good game at the end of the day. So
Yeah. Man, well, there's a lot of good games to play right now, and there's
Yeah.
a lot that are coming soon. Actually, like Starfield, we have Shattered Space hitting at the end of this month. Ara History Untold, which is kind of changing what we think of with 4X type strategy games on PC. It's coming to PC Game Pass in a few days. Frostpunk 2, which is another strategy game that is getting really good reviews, early reviews, is actually, I think today, hitting PC Game Pass, which is coming later to console Game Pass, day and date as well. And we just keep getting these different awesome things randomly. We just had Age of Mythology Retold launch a few weeks back, and they're kind of hitting their ground running. We got coming up as well, we have Flight Sim in November coming out. We have Towerborn is in early access on Steam right now if you want to play that. But also we have Indiana Jones hitting, and Call of Duty still hitting this year. Then you also have Vessel of Hatred coming for Diablo 4. Just the amount of content is like pretty staggering. And then like what we talked about going into next year too with the actual roadmap. But I think there's also some more surprises. Because Tokyo Game Show is was it next week now? And hey, they're actually having like some kind of a stream kind of showy thing. As Phil Spencer came out and had a little video where he's like, tune into this and we're gonna have some stuff to watch. So I don't know, this has kind of led to some speculation on Xbox 2. Shout out to Xbox 2 with Rand and Jez. There's been more smoke now, according to Jez, that hey, wouldn't be out of the question to see Final Fantasy 16 actually get announced for Xbox, as well as other Final Fantasy content. Leaving off the table for now, Final Fantasy 7 remake. But we'll see what happens with that in the future. I think that one is still a deal that is being kind of enforced by Sony there, but we'll see what happens in the future on that. Supposedly Square kind of wants to go ahead and put their games everywhere they can, right? So I think that's going to be a part of this announcement. We also maybe going to see some Sega games show up here. Sega just announced the new Yakuza Pirate game today, which is pretty crazy. It's like a
Square just had another statement where they're like, didn't meet our expectations. Which is, again, like, when have they had a game that met their expectations? So
Yeah,
it
it's-
just
Final
really
Fantasy
points
15.
to 15.
Yep.
Yep, I guess that was one.
15 and 14. Only games right now that, like, yeah, Final Fantasy 15 is probably the last time, and Final Fantasy 7 remake the first time it came around.
Yeah.
Because the second time, apparently, it's not. That also didn't hit the numbers that they expected for it to hit. But again, that's what happens when you got exclusivity.
Yeah, they've been always taking that.
Certain IP.
Man, we've had streams and shows and all this stuff talking about Square Enix like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, saying all this stuff whenever they would blame the Western developers and stuff for the lack of success on their games. And then they end up letting Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics go. And then, hey, guess what? Your JRPGs still aren't hitting like you want them to also, right? Because they keep doing these deals, man. They keep doing these deals, and some of the studios and the games they let go were actually way more successful than these other ones. But they see Final Fantasy 16, and they're like, hey, you know what? We got to stop doing what we've been doing. Now, this all kind of started happening after Square Enix replaced their president, right? They had voted the existing one out because they kept, again, failing to meet expectations. This is not new information that Final Fantasy 16 and 7 Rebirth have failed to meet their expectations. It's actually the second or third time that we've seen these kind of come about, but it just keeps people just have to keep reinforcing it into the PlayStation diehard fanboys fans, because they keep saying that these games are huge successes, but Square keeps saying that they're not, right? And people are like, why would they put them on Xbox? Why would they put them on Xbox? It doesn't matter. Like, they're not going to help at all, because they want their games to be everywhere, right? They're done with this whole, hey, take a little bit of money up front to give a little bit of insurance on the development costs and marketing. We're going to get behind this brand, and we're going to start pushing the games as if they're like part of Sony's platform or something. They're done with that whole idea, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're going to be making their games everywhere. And we already started seeing that with Final Fantasy 14 started making the way. And then now you're going to see Final Fantasy 16, it seems like, here coming up at TGS. And then maybe some other things. Part of the speculation was maybe like a pixel type, the smaller Final Fantasy games, the originals, or like 1 through 6 maybe, or something coming out as like the smaller versions of those, right? And we'll see what happens with that. I'm crossing my fingers for maybe even a new game announcement or something off the wall that we can anticipate. Like I've been saying, my pipe dream would be Final Fantasy Tactics actually gets announced there hand in hand with Xbox.
I was just tired of them, like, and I'm sure a lot of Xbox fans probably agree, like dipping their toe with the Xbox, like just trying it a little bit and just be like, oh well, we'll put one Final Fantasy game on there, and then you miss like 5 or 6 of them after that. It's like, if I were to ever jump in the Final Fantasy genre or universe, I would like if I like this game, like, oh, there's a possibility that the next game comes to that platform. So I don't know. I haven't been interested in the Final Fantasy universe in quite some time, but like, out of Square, I remember we talked about this, like the different parts of Square Enix that I was always interested in wasn't the Final Fantasy bits. It was always the studios that have made like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. Which is why I thought it was crazy that they sold that off, because you are selling off a possible portion of the audience that would have never touched Final Fantasy. But you know, they're gonna do what they need to do, and I think we're gonna see a new Square Enix soon. and maybe it starts at the Tokyo Game Show. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I like you said, Mav. I don't think 7 is going to be here, but I think even Jazz confirmed that. It's like I don't think we'll see 7 there.
Yeah, I don't think 7 remake. I don't think those are going to come until the trilogy is ready, and I think they'll announce like a special edition, all 3 games, one package, all at one time, $150, top of the line, completely like they sell the whole package at that point, especially to the Xbox base. And I mean, and a lot of people would find worth in that. Again, you're getting 3 complete games that's easily probably almost 200 hours worth of game time. Not including doing everything else in between. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of excitement that could be happening at TGS. Again, we're going from like what at Tokyo, it's at TGS. We're going from like nothing supposedly being here to Phil coming out and say, hey, maybe you want to tune into TGS. It's insane.
Yeah. It seems like it's like kind of transforming. Probably because of the Square thing. I want to go into the actual Xbox Wire announcement here that they put the other day.
Oh yeah.
Says the Tokyo Game Show 2024 broadcast returns on Thursday, September 26th at 7 p.m. Japan Standard Time, 3 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. UK. We warmly welcome players around the world to tune in as we share content from Xbox Game Studios, Activision, Blizzard Entertainment, and Bethesda. We'll all showcase an exciting lineup of games from third-party partners, primarily based in Japan and across Asia, including games coming to Xbox Game Pass. It'll be available on the Tokyo Game Show official YouTube channel and also on their Xbox channel. And I'm kind of thinking that they're going to have a focus on some of those Japanese partners, like Square Enix being one, because they had that announcement last year at TGS, like, hey, Square and Microsoft, Final Fantasy 14, we're doing the deal, right? It's happening. This year, I think it's going to take that further. I think we're going to see more from Sega and potentially Atlas. We're going to see maybe more marketing for Metaphor, right? And more talk about Metaphor. And I think we're also going to see potentially more talk from Capcom and some of that stuff. Those are kind of the 3 big players that we kind of think about when we say when we see new game announcements or new IP where they're kind of partnering with Xbox now. Square would be the interesting one because, hey, guess what? They've already started that with Visions of Mana, right?
Yeah.
So this is not like
Bone Stars is coming.
It's not to be unexpected if they actually have something to announce here. Like it was crazy to see them at the Dev Direct. That was already a sign of the partnership where they're not taking Sony's exclusivity money. I think they're taking Xbox's marketing money, and we'll see also if that transitions into some kind of Game Pass money, right? And deals like they can make there. They already have been accepting somewhat of that because the Octopath Traveler one, 2, it wasn't just that 2 got put in there, but also 1 returned, right? So obviously this was like a sign of like a bigger thing, right? To actually have Octopath 1 go back into the service when it had already been there before.
I remember them saying they were really happy with Game Pass, and then it disappeared. I was like, that was weird.
Yeah. And then you actually have Final Fantasy 14 online content part of Game Pass as well. I believe they had stuff like that. So then do you have Atlas having their expansion for Persona 3, I believe, is in Game Pass as well. So like there's deals being made for that region left and right now from Xbox, putting a focus on trying to make gamers understand that you can find and play these experiences there. And part of it is by making announcements and doing deals. And those happen at times like this. You also better believe they're working with everybody there right now, trying to get more deals done while they're in Japan, right? While they're at Tokyo Game Show, they're talking to developers, they're looking, they're prospecting, they're seeing what new games they haven't heard of or seen before. They're trying to get the ears to the ground on that stuff. They're trying to make good with some of these developers that have kind of written them off and all these other kind of things. This is a part of all of that side of the business, and I think ultimately the bigger presences they have at these kind of shows now. Whereas we thought originally they weren't going to have much of a presence this year at TGS, was what all the rumors were. Seemingly, hey, there's more and more and more, and now they're going to come out with some kind of a big thing. And we'll see if it's like a huge announcement or if it's like Final Fantasy 16 alone coming to Xbox is going to be news everywhere, right? That's going to be big news if that happens. So, but I think it's more than that. I think you're going to have more of this kind of Xbox Square, handshake, more to come, that kind of feeling.
We're on the stage with them a couple times. So.
It's worked for Sega and Atlas, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before we were like, oh yeah, they're doing a deal with Sega, but still, Atlas. Are we ever going to see anything from there? Now it's like every Atlas game, right? Even the brand new IP from Atlas, the one that is supposed to be their next big franchise, maybe like Persona, their next big IP in Metaphor is being marketed as marketing deal with Xbox from Atlas.
Yeah, I remember thinking like, oh yeah, that's never going.
That's from Atlas, right? Like
as a thought.
That last generation, that would have never been those games. Atlas games didn't even come to Xbox, right? So I think we're gonna have some interesting things here at TGS. Also, there's another Game Pass game coming, day and date called Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Wuchang. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. Fallen Feathers, I think they've already said that we're gonna see more of that there as well. So there's that to look forward to. But yeah, man, like Steel, what would like kind of be an exciting thing for you to be announced at the TGS presentation?
Oh, I want to see if Xbox is going to follow up with their Pearl Abyss kind of team up that they've been having going on. Black Desert's been doing really well on Game Pass. I want to see whether they've built a solid relationship because of that. I think Black Desert's really been able to give a good fill a good space in the MMO space as well, especially for more action oriented combat for MMOs. Open world, really vast spaces. So coming off the heels of that, I would like to see Crimson Desert possibly coming into Game Pass or some deal being made for that. Again, just to kind of get more attention to the West. I do see more people picking up on it now. But I do think that people still kind of have the wrong impression of what the game is going to be like. I think even comparing it to The Witcher is kind of it's still a different game. But I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, it has a story-rich content like The Witcher does. I do think Pearl Abyss has a lot of those chances. But again, I'm always going to go to that Eastern flavor. I want to see what kind of deals they're going to kind of reach further in. I want to see Wuthering Waves come on over, whether they cut a deal with Kuro Games. Having Genshin finally on Xbox is cool and all, but to be frank, Genshin is a kiddie game. For better or for worse. I know some people can find some attractive characters in there, but it is a very basic game to play, and I don't think it has as much sauce or can get as much or that cool factor that Xbox is also looking for, like a game like Wuthering Waves does. Again, being gacha games, it's still very interesting to see these games come over and get more attention as well, because they are very different types of games who have their own huge communities and everything. But it could be a way for Xbox to possibly get some to tie in some of that mobile gaming money as well, right? Maybe play some of their cards, whether that be with King or whatnot. Start some partnerships up with there. Those are the things. Maybe we see some more about PokeV, the game that mysteriously went away, and it was like that. It always reminds me of Ness from Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
But it was that's what I think of. But it was like this Pokemon kind of game. It was open world, and it was like open battles and everything too. It was like action-based combat. That was cool. But yeah, man, that's more so what I'm looking for. Those titles that we don't see a lot come over. Very similar to like Black Myth Wukong and stuff like that. So more people can get their eyes on that and kind of start appreciating what the East is kind of bringing in as far as the flavor goes.
Yeah, man. Right on, dude. Yeah. I forgot. Like, they could talk about the release of Genshin Impact also coming to Xbox, right? Because that was kind of big news that they had earlier. What about you, 3-Bit? What you looking forward to at TGS for Xbox? Think they're gonna surprise us a little bit?
Honestly, I want to see the Final Fantasy announcement. I don't have much besides that. I just want to see whatever they got cooking. I'm sure there's different actually what I want to see is different Japanese developers partnering with Xbox. I remember like 2 years ago, Phil said he wants to partner more. I don't know if that's still part of their plans of like of like how much they would want to prioritize that, but the fact that they even here at the Tokyo Game Show is a pretty good indicator that they still care about partnering with Japanese developers, at least to the extent of working with the big ones, right? We got your Sega, you got your Square. I do wonder if we'll see some Bandai Namco on here, maybe see some Dragon Ball Z stuff. I don't know. I just want to see what they got cooking. I don't have any expectation or what's actually going to be there besides Final Fantasy. I do wonder if we are going to see Dead or Alive at some point. I don't know, not just on the Xbox
Bro, it's
stage. I'm just talking
time.
about in
Yeah.
general.
It's
It's been a
time.
Well, how about
while.
Soul
That is Soul
Calibur?
Calibur.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Soul
Yeah,
Calibur. Where are they at? Especially
yeah.
Soul Calibur.
It's been a minute, and that's one of my favorite fighting games, Dead or Alive. So, um, yeah, I would love to see that at the Tokyo Game Show. But yeah, we'll see. I don't have like specific things besides like Final Fantasy. Just interested in seeing what that looks like on stage, of how they plan on talking about it. Like maybe the Final Fantasy devs come up and be like going forward, every Final Fantasy game will be on Xbox, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe some statements and regarding their partnership could be interesting. Just because for so long, how close they are with Sony. Um, it's been pretty obvious. So it'll be cool just to see what that looks like. Want to know what Dead or Alive looks like? If it hasn't been rumored at all. That's just something that's my own personal
Yeah, no, that was a
but
good one, man. I miss that franchise too. It's
yep,
just fun.
Yo.
yep,
Yep.
yep. So yep, that's what I'm looking for. What are you looking forward to, man?
Oh man, like my dream thing is the Final Fantasy Tactics game that we all know exists. The remake for that gets shown and announced at TGS, or any other show at any time. Please, I'm just ready for it. It's the one that I saw from those Nvidia leaks a couple years ago that has not been revealed yet. There's been more smoke earlier this year, actually, that it was a real thing as well. So I think that game exists. Just don't know when or where it's going to be announced or when it's going to come out. So that's my kind of pipe dream,
Yep.
right? But besides that, man, there's just so much. I am looking forward to Xbox maintaining their aggressiveness there, right? And now where they have in a market selling to the actual audience there, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, right? But whatever the moves they make over there have an impact for all of us in the games that we also buy in other
I
parts of
think
the world.
in a way, because I remember seeing a lot of different articles of how Sony has basically abandoned Japan in terms of like um the types of games they make, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it could be interesting for the Japanese audience to see Xbox invest more in Japanese studios. I mean, I'm just wondering if it's still a part of their plan. I know at some point Phil mentioned how much they want to do it. I'm just wondering what is
Yeah.
still part of
Well,
the
as
plan.
as
And
room for growth in other parts of the world, they have the most room for growth because they have like almost no
yeah,
market share, right? So like obviously, but like I look more of it like the deals they make impact the games we get everywhere, and some of these games that are like made from Japanese creators, and part of it is like you have to be somewhat relevant, at least with the news and all that kind of stuff there to get sometimes in the mindset of these developers is somewhere you want to put your games, right? Like, and because if they're not familiar with it or don't even care or about the brand or whatever, it's like, oh, we're gonna put a what's an Xbox, you know? Like, and the the longer they're not really relevant there, that can have even more effects. So I still anticipate more aggressiveness. If Pong was on the train of, acquisition season back, get one of those developers or a small publisher or something like that, it'd be pretty crazy, especially maybe from like Korea or China or
A
something like
Square
that. I don't know.
acquisition would be insane. That would be
Yeah,
really
that
funny.
would be really crazy. I don't know if that one's gonna happen, but it would be interesting. But I do expect more partnerships. I expect more aggressiveness, maybe multi-type game deals for games like coming into Game Pass, or helping developers get their games off the ground and have Xbox as a home for some of their products and some of their games, right? Whether it be marketing and or whatever, right? Um, so I'm expecting some of those, and I'm expecting with some of the more well-known companies like Capcom and Sega and Square, but maybe Bandai Namco, maybe Koei Tecmo. I saw you in the chat. Mr. Nichols said Ninja Gaiden. Bring back Ninja Gaiden as well. That would be absolutely amazing. Maybe Tomonobu Itagaki makes a return, right? To show his uh, sunglasses and black leather jacket and messy hair, and comes down to like, I'm making a game with Xbox.
Yeah. Captain Destruction says, I think Soul Calibur isn't as big as they want it to be. I think a former director of the game series talked about it a while ago. And then he says a Square acquisition would be awful for everyone. Xbox needs to focus on what they have now.
Well, we'll see. So as far as Soul Calibur, you can say that about every fighting game franchise last generation. Last gen, the pretty much except for Mortal Kombat, I'll give Mortal Kombat and Injustice. They like carried fighting. Street Fighter was down, Tekken was down. Like everything for the most of the mainstay. Like there's even there was a Marvel vs. Capcom game that came out that didn't really hit. Like fighting games last generation, just they didn't put the budget, they didn't put the time, they didn't put the effort. They treated it like a double A sub genre niche, and that's the results they got. This gen been a lot different, right? Last generation, NetherRealm was the only one carrying the torch, really, and treating it like a big time thing. This generation's, we got Street Fighter 6, Capcom went all in on it. Tekken 8, Bandai Namco went all in on it, right? I think they can see the success that they have from Tekken and say, okay, well, if we treat our games with respect and actually give the devs budget and time, we can actually get results. Because Soul Calibur used to be a popular franchise. It wasn't as popular as Tekken or Street Fighter, but like you can do better than you did with the last Soul Cal, right?
Yeah, you can easily start hyping people up again,
Yeah.
but the fighting genre in general is a little nicher. I mean, it is niche compared to
Fighting, yeah, it's become completely. It's not what it used to be, but it still has its pocket. Even Tekken 8, I mean, as good as the game was, it's things are. That's what makes it difficult too, man. Because it's like, I think Soul Calibur also struggles because Soul Calibur tended to kind of push it as well, as far as like keeping the sexy elements in there, but also having the customization and having deep storytelling and having your own ways that you can play the game. And I think with the last one, they didn't get the engagement that I guess they were looking for, although it was a really good game. So it's interesting to see how this is going to kind of play out, because I mean, again, I think NetherRealm is tapped out too. As far as fighting game goes, I don't think MK1 is as
They didn't do as good as
was as received as well.
It was. I think it was received decently. It just wasn't. It didn't do as well as MK. Was it 11 or 12?
Yeah,
11?
11.
Yeah, 11.
But they're still kind of leading the pack, though, right? Like NetherRealm.
I mean, yeah.
To, like
Of course,
to
of course,
the
I don't know. It's Street
Compared to,
Fighter
like,
6. Capcom applauded the success of Street Fighter 6 multiple times since its release.
okay. Did they?
Bandai Namco celebrated the success of Tekken 8. I think they had reasonable expectations for those games, right? They didn't expect them to do like, $20 million players or copies sold in the first year, whatever. But like, they had reasonable expectations, and I think they exceeded them or at least met them to an extent. The difference is more Mortal Kombat, because they have always treated it still like that AAA huge game release, right?
Oh yeah,
They have a different level of expectations there, right? And Mortal Kombat 1, they had last year when even games like NBA 2K were down and other massive franchises were down.
yeah. Mortal Kombat was.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat was down comparatively what they had expected, but I don't think that was necessarily a that's more of like a market thing, more so than anything. But ultimately the other games like those Tekkens and Street Fighters and those other ones have kind of raised back to a little bit better level of prominence than they did before. They had fallen off so much, man. And I think there's room for those games to kind of keep coming back. I would love to see Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive as well. But don't do any gimmicky, weird ass, fucking weird shit with your releases. Like, like if you install Dead or Alive now, it's such an annoying fucking thing. There's like 100 different things. That
how they broke it down.
Oh god, it's just so stupid and annoying, man. Like
that was their live service version of Dead or Alive, and I think if you bought all the characters, it made the game stupid expensive.
Yeah,
but even now, it's still like,
if you get like the complete edition of Dead or Alive, the last one that came out. Turn off your notifications for a little while because it's going to be popping for like an hour.
It's like annoying. I had to uninstall the game. I did have fun with it, but like when we were all playing it for that tournament a while ago. But yeah, Dead or Alive, that is not how you should approach the Dead or Alive franchise.
But also, the last Dead or Alive actually had a lot of issues at launch.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it was crashing. It was kind of had some frame rate issues. It was kind of janky. It had some stuttering and stuff. And then, but like on Series X, like this generation, they had updated it and everything, and it fucking runs like butter, man. It is gorgeous.
Yeah, I've only experienced it with good performance, I guess.
Yeah, it's probably one of the better playing fighting games actually on current gen consoles. Dead or Alive is, even if you have to sit through the annoying installs and everything. But just seeing the success of some of these other ones, I think, it would be nice to see. It would be nice to see them do a crossover thing too, where you have like the special character from each platform.
That's the way to do it.
That generated excitement and hype for the game for each company, right?
It did.
So yeah, I hope they do that. And like when we were talking about like pockets with fighting games, they're definitely they're niche, but they have their pocket of people that can definitely enjoy it. And I think the same with stealth games. You come back, the same.
Yeah,
bring it back.
Yes,
you gotta wait for Perfect Dark.
Yeah, that'll be 2026 probably. Perfect Dark.
Yeah, we'll get that before Splinter Cell. The way it's looking,
man.
And again, third-person shooters. Ghost Recon's also rumored to go first person. So there's a whole niche that's not fulfilled right now that I think still has good gameplay.
Whoever jumps in, they have potential to get a spotlight on them at least.
Yeah. But I'm going to go out on a limb because we're talking about TGS and we're also talking about Xbox partnerships. We're also talking about fighting games.
Yeah.
Virtua Fighter. If they would announce that Virtua Fighter is coming back from Sega and it's one of these announcements, that would generate a lot of hype and excitement actually at TGS, because that's a franchise a lot of people talking. Yeah, it would.
It would definitely get
talking. But yeah, man, I think it's going to be an interesting thing. I'm not expecting like Xbox to deliver like a Xbox Game Showcase 2024 like summer showcase level type presentation or whatever. But I am expecting some really cool things that especially if you're fans of some of these JRPGs or action games and fighting games, maybe you may get some surprises here. But I also do think they try and sell and promote like Flight Sim. I do expect them to maybe talk about Diablo. But what would be crazy? Another pipe dream, another off the wall one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you announce that the StarCraft franchise is coming back at TGS, because StarCraft is hugely popular in Asia, especially in Korea.
Mhm.
So it would kind of be like generate hype around the Xbox brand. And now making an announcement like that.
That would
At
be the place to
TGS.
do it, I think. Yeah.
I think it would be dope to get an announcement that they did what they did with Age 2, right? How they had got y'all to jump back in there and everything. They gave StarCraft 2 that same treatment and made it really accessible on console. Um, okay, therefore carrying that over onto PC as well, and kind of trying to just kind of reinvigorate the StarCraft, kind of just starting off with that, right? I think that'll be probably one of the easiest ways, especially to your point, Mav, of resparking that Asian culture and getting people like reinvigorating what StarCraft is. So.
Yeah,
Yeah, facts.
it'd be interesting to
That would be
see.
insane, man. I didn't even think about that.
That
But
the internet would explode, like if that something like that happened, right? But I don't
yeah.
know.
I
Like,
mean, you're talking about games to remake and remaster. It is, I mean, from until Dawn, and then what was the one Sony is doing right now?
Days
I can't remember.
Gone and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Days Gone, Horizon.
Yeah.
That is a game that could definitely use a if they wanted to remake and remaster
So
that could use
yeah,
it.
you could do that. You could have it like hey, we're having a big update to StarCraft for now, but also in the future look forward to the team working on a new game.
That could be a cool way of doing it. Yeah,
I'm gonna add this in there just as a little bit of speculation, a little bit of pipe dream thing, a little bit of randomness here. Okay. Remember the rumors recently that there was going to be like a dumping of ABK games coming soon, like 13 or whatever to Game Pass. I can't remember the exact number, right?
still haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
Now also we had the rumblings about all the Transformer stuff, right? The
Oh,
Transformer,
I want those.
War for Cybertron, Fall for Cybertron. Those games actually
With multiplayer.
had been showed back up in the storefront for Xbox. There was rumors that they had gotten the rights back to be able to actually update those games, or potentially, if not update them, or at least put them, relist them and put them in Game Pass. Right now, what's all the rage right now happening at the theaters? And the early reviews is the Transformers 1 right now is popping at the theaters, and which my initial reaction when I first saw the original trailer, I was like, I don't know about this, whatever. But
I saw it.
seeing the trailers, I remember seeing the trailer at Deadpool Wolverine at Wolverine. There's a new trailer I saw there, and when I saw that one, I was like, oh, okay, this is
it watches different in the movie theater.
Yeah, well, this is also a little bit different, like tone than they had originally in the first trailer,
that
right?
too, yeah.
So I saw that, I was like, oh, this actually looks pretty interesting. And now it's coming out. It has like a 90-something% user score on Rotten Tomatoes for Transformers 1. Critic scores is like high 80s or something like that. Anyway, Transformers 1 is being praised as like the future of the Transformers franchise for movies and everything, and like, hey, people are loving it, right? So you have this hype going around Transformers brand. Also, it was made originally, I think it was like made by Japanese creators back in the day, the original Gen 1 Transformers.
It popped up on the store for a bit, right? Like, or can you buy it now? Like, I remember seeing something about it.
They showed back up in the storefront as relisted, but like I don't think you can buy them.
Yeah, you couldn't do nothing with it. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But maybe that timing wise, it all works out for TGS to kind of have that announcement.
That would be kind of convenient.
Yeah.
So where else would you do it? I mean, I guess you could do it at Keeley's show if you want.
Yeah, but that's like too far off. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty far. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know where else you would do it this year. There's Tokyo Game Show, and then what is after that? I guess just the Game Awards, right?
Yeah, I think to your point, that would be kind of cool, man, if they did something like that, kind of tying different things together. The other thing too, is the Transformers Reactivate. Is beginning some rumors and stuff out there, but we know that game is being worked on actively, and that's also they're also doing Gen 1 with those as well. Right, or an iteration of Gen 1, their version of whatever Gen 1 is going to look like. And that was looking dope. So I think this would definitely be a prime opportunity to get everybody reinvigorated, because I think Well, depending on how they ended up developing those games, but I'd imagine, at least on the Xbox side of things, because we know that they have the upscaling techniques and everything. But um, I'm pretty sure they could probably drop that game back and drop it like in the Game Pass as an example, or just make it available to people who have already purchased it previously. If you got the disc, whatever the case may be, and you just get the better version of that game, right? Or the upgraded version because you have the hardware and everything to run it. So therefore, it could just breathe new life into those games because those games hold up pretty darn well visually, right? It has one of those art styles that really does stand out, has some realism to it, but just enough to where it's like, okay, I can still it might not be the crispest because of when it was made, but I think that would be really dope to see. I mean, I would jump back into it at least for that multiplayer. That Transformers War for Cybertron, bro. That game is outstanding. So yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. I thought I thought the original like Gen 1 Transformers was like created and like artist was like from Japan, but it wasn't. It's pretty crazy. But Takara Tomy was one of the
I'm
toy
surprised
creators.
that a lot of the games aren't popped up yet on the Game Pass, but I guess that could be a good place to do
It
it.
takes time. Yeah, that stuff takes time, man. They
Yeah,
they have timing for it and everything. It also depends on what, because wasn't it Jason Ronald and his team that were mainly heading a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be how like, and if they're working on, and again, rumors are saying now that Xbox might not have that console or whatever until 2027 or whatever. If they've been working on that the entire time, their focus may not be on bringing those games in as quick as
Yeah, that team
possible.
is
So
kind of gone too.
they
Or not
probably
gone.
had to, yeah, that's the other thing. So they probably had to get another team together and say, hey, we got this stuff coming in, look at it and kind of go from there. So that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
looking at.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess before they ended the backwards compatibility program, for those that don't know,
Yeah.
they basically they went to a bunch of different publishers and then they did as much as they could with what they
For
had, but
free.
Yeah.
And
for
like
free.
for other
Yeah.
people's games for us, right?
Yeah.
Like for FPS
Something you don't think
boosts and all
about.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's
Mhm.
crazy. And I remember when ABK was announced, right? I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I bet they're probably gonna end up doing like some more work on those games and stuff, and maybe doing FPS boost on some of them, or bringing some of them that aren't available anymore back. But people are like, no, they shut down back compatibility program. It's done. I'm like, you don't think them spending $70 billion on a whole publisher that was one of the ones that wouldn't let you do this stuff before would actually change your perception on maybe, hey, we should actually go back and touch some of these games now? Yeah,
Especially if you,
yeah, like you have the whole catalog now. You added
yeah.
a catalog that goes so far back into history, man. Now they can't just do everything, but they can
There's some key
definitely
ones.
put some key titles in there, and make sure that they play as good as they possibly can, because guess what, that's just what they've been doing this whole generation, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of these games. And it just never surprised me, the fact that they would possibly do that with ABK games. Something we've been saying early on, that it makes the most sense. And I also think it's potentially why it's taken longer to get a lot of them in there, because some of these older ones, I think maybe they were doing some work on, not
Yeah.
just put them in there.
There's
And
work and then there's licenses too, like
yeah,
figuring out like at least with the Tony Hawk franchise, like I
Apparently, there's an
really want to
announcement
play
coming
under
from
it.
that too.
yeah,
Apparently.
yeah. The 25th
I would
anniversary
love
is
to do
coming up
that.
for that, so we have that to look forward to. Supposedly, they're going to make an announcement there. Um, yeah, and I think they kind of own outright the whole Tony Hawk rights, but
Mm-hmm.
like they
No,
still
yeah.
work with Tony. Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly. It's a little different than usual license stuff, but Tony Hawk games also have a lot of licensed music, and they also have a lot of other products and stuff in them that may be issues with licensing as well. So,
Yeah.
but we did get the Tony Hawk remake or remaster for 1 and 2. Remake, I guess is what I'll call it. And maybe there's more to come with that. But I anticipate maybe some news coming sooner than later for some of this stuff. So
Yeah, I
We'll
want to see
see.
some drops.
There was also the Singularity relisting or Singularity news that came up with that too about the trademark or something to do with Singularity being kind of brought
Oh
back
yeah,
up.
wasn't it that was another relist, or
I can't remember. Pog
remember
had
seeing
shared it and we went over it, but I can't remember. My brain can only hold so much information.
that.
So
Yeah,
anyway, there's something to do with Singularity, maybe coming back or something like that. So anyway, guys, lots to look forward to next week. Again, not only do we have TGS, we have game releases, Ara History Untold, Frostpunk 2 hitting Game Pass staying date. On the 30th, you have Starfield Shattered Space. Whatever surprises we get from the TGS thing, maybe there'll be something there, who knows. But also, it's interesting, we're actually going to have a state of play, and so there's from PlayStation, so we'll have that to watch and see. If it's supposed to be a third-party show, primarily. So if you're an Xbox fan, it's something I would watch because maybe there's games that are going to be announced or shown that are also coming to Xbox as well for that state of play. And yeah, we'll see. This end of this month is kind of pretty damn exciting, though, if you're a gamer. So, but I do want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of Xbox Ultimate Podcast. We had plenty of Concord slander, as Nate Dogg predicted early in the show. But also did some good comparisons on kind of what Xbox is doing with it and a lot of their franchises, and so how some of those comparisons that some people are making don't really make any damn sense, right? Then also, yeah, TGS, man, lots to be excited for. Steel, thanks for hopping in today, man. I appreciate you being here, bro.
Hey man, it was fucking fantastic conversation to be had. You know, we always got to give out a little bit of smoke and keep it interesting for the people listening in and whoever want to clip things and tell us that we're Ponybot PC MR people. But yeah, man. Everybody, it was great to see y'all chop it up in chat as well. But you can find me, Steel Rain. That's I, Steel Rain. That T is a 7 everywhere. Google's probably the easiest place to get that information. There will not be a living split screen in the morning. Paul's got some things to do. So do I. So, hey, just look for us on the 28th of September. We'll be back at it live, raw, and uncut, as I like to say, giving y'all that RTS perspective as we do. But we will be live tomorrow night with PTK Blam on the Shop Podcast. I believe that's happened at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. I believe that's how that works out. So if you want our takes, definitely give it there. I've been playing a few games recently. I got into this little street Need for Speed, Forza-esque type game that I found recently that has recently hit PC called Street Car X or whatever, or Car X Street. And it's a really dope game. So, but between that, Space Marine 2 and the other games that I have on my list, man, and the hype that Sparking Zero is just constantly igniting in me, more and more gameplay that I've seen in that. It's been no better time to be a gamer. Extremely enjoying the hobby. More and more things to talk about and get hype about. So yeah, man, appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate you brothers for having me on and having the great conversation as well. And yeah, man, much love.
Yeah, appreciate you, Steel, for being here, man. 3-bit. Again, you're back from Paris and feeling better. So you got any shows coming up? Are you bringing Pixelated Echoes back anytime soon?
Yep, Pixelated Echoes is returning this Sunday, so be sure to check that out at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Besides that, I just been working, so AJC, if you guys have been in Georgia or Atlanta, AJC is basically the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I've been doing a lot of their ads and a lot of their commercials and stuff like that. So if you're in the Georgia area, there's this really cool commercial popping up pretty soon. So look out for that. Other than that, man, Metal Gear Solid is where I'll be. That, and I'm finishing up Mafia. So I finished the first Mafia game. I'm on the second. I'm almost done with the second, and then I'm gonna move on to the third probably after, which was my favorite so far. I really like the third one. But appreciate being on. I decided to hop on. I was like, hey, I want to jump on Ultimate. I really wanted to stay for the for the last one, but I had to catch the flight. But that was such an awesome episode. For those who haven't seen it, I encourage you guys to go back and watch. It's a celebration of the channel and all the people in there. Steele's always a pleasure being on with you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Everybody in the chat, you
Okay.
guys had awesome games also that you guys were mentioning. Like I seen someone said like Dead to Rights and some other games. You guys in the chat were killing it as well. So appreciate seeing you guys almost every different channel I've been on. I see like you guys just supporting. So appreciate y'all. And I'll see you on the next one. So bye y'all.
Yeah, right on, man. Appreciate you as always, 3-bit. For anybody looking forward to any of the other content we got going on here at Fun Speculation, stay tuned. This weekend might do some game streams. And then next week we'll be back for FSP on Monday, PM in the PM on Thursday, and then Xbox Ultimate Podcast as always on Friday. And also we'll have I'm not gonna obviously co-stream the TGS thing because I'm not doing that early, but maybe we'll have some kind of reaction to some
Was
news
it
that
next?
day or
Is it
whatever.
next week?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
it's
so 26.
yeah, 26. Yeah. So that's on what, Thursday of next week, right?
Yeah, that's Thursday.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
me and Pong will probably just cover that on Thursday night for PM of the PM. But chat, you guys rock as always, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace out. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye y'all.